It's been a while since I put out a video, and there's good reason for that. I've been very, very busy. What you don't know about me, besides the fact that I like Land Rovers, is that I am a software engineer. I build software for a living. And as a software engineer, I always have my own little side projects. I've had several of them throughout the years. None of them have really gone anywhere. But I've had this idea rattling around in my little brain for several years. And it's kind of centered around the idea of, I'm into camping and overlanding. I used to do some backpacking. What I wanted to do is build an app that helps you organize all of those things. Because, I've actually skipped going on camping trips before just because I don't want to deal with all the hassle of trying to remember where the gear is. Do I have all the gear? Where are we supposed to be? Who's cooking what? That's what this app does. It kind of solves all of those problems in one app. It's called Wild Plan, and it's in the Apple App Store now. Sorry if you're on Android. I have not built it for Android yet. If it succeeds to some degree on the App Store, then I'll put it on, I'll build it for Android too, which will be more work. But I would be happy to do it if it's successful in the App Store. So anyway, that aside, I went on a trip after the last video I made. I went on a trip to the Juan Mountains in southwest Colorado. I actually have property in southwest Colorado in Durango. So I'm there a lot, but I've never gotten to do all of the mountain passes. You know, the famous like Imogene, which I didn't get to do, Black Bear, which we didn't get to do, those were closed. But we did do several of them. We stayed in Silverton, some really cool camp spots in Animas Forks, in the old mining towns. 8 days. We were there for 8 days. It was really cool. It was awesome. And with the Arizona Land Rover Owners Group, which I've been a member of for a couple years, and they do a lot of really good trips. And this was the best one ever. And everybody had a great time. And the LR4 did great. It had a great time. Well, it didn't have a great time, but it provided a great time. Anyway, the purpose of this video is just to kind of catch you up on like how has the LR4 been so far, because previous videos I had just gotten it, so I didn't really have an experience with it yet. So this trip was a pretty good kind of trial by fire, because we were in some remote places, and I was unfamiliar with it, and new wheels and tires on it, new radio install in it, as you saw in that last video, and it did great. It did really well. I did have a check engine light come on. I did have a suspension fault. We'll get into that in a minute. The one thing that really stood out to me about the LR4 was the ride quality. I had not done like a serious road trip in it prior to this. My goodness, that thing just eats up the miles. It's just such a pleasure to drive. Compared to my Discovery 2, so to back up, I drive from Arizona, from the Phoenix area, Scottsdale specifically, to Durango, Colorado. I do that trip probably 5 to 10 times a summer because I have land there and we camp there. It's kind of like our own private campground. So I'm very familiar with doing that drive in various vehicles, especially my Discovery 2 that I had sold. Done that drive a lot of times, and that compared to the LR4, the Discovery 2 is like driving a covered wagon. It's that much of a difference. And as far as like quality of ride off-road too, a lot of this trip was just, just dirt roads, really. Yeah, kind of rough dirt roads, but dirt roads. And I didn't even need to air down. I did, but I didn't have to because that thing rides so nicely, even on pretty rough dirt roads. So super happy with the ride quality. While I was in Durango, the first night of the trip, my buddy and I woke up in the morning, and this is the first cold weather I'd experienced with the LR4. It wasn't that cold. It was probably in the 40s at that time, maybe the upper 30s. And I noticed one side of it was kind of just kind of hanging down to one side, and I thought, oh, here we go. First freaking night of the trip, and I'm going to have a Land Rover problem. So I started it up. Everything inflated fine. The air suspension came back, and there was no fault or anything. So it was fine. It was just leaking overnight in the cold. I've had a lot of weird problems arise from the cold. It likes the heat. It doesn't like the cold. So anyway, we went on our trip and camped out and had a great time. And then probably midway through the trip, I had a check engine light come on. I'm like, oh man, it was right before we were going to try to do Imogene Pass halfway and going up the wrong way, because you couldn't go the way normally you would go from Telluride into Ouray. The Telluride side was closed from some kind of a landslide from weather. So we were going to try to do it from the back way and just kind of go to the top. Anyway, that check engine light came on before that. I'm like, so I read the code. It's a fuel pump voltage failure, very common issue that a lot of people have, and everybody goes right to, oh, it's the fuel pump, replace the fuel pump, which I may need to do. I don't know even now. This was back in October, by the way. So I thought, well, it's not running poorly. It runs fine, and it doesn't seem like there's any problem. So I went on with the trip, and that check engine light stayed on the whole time. I did clear it once, but it came right back. And I did the whole trip without any issues, and it was a couple 100 miles and no problems. And funny thing is, that light eventually went away, and what made it go away, well, maybe it didn't make it go away, but there's some correlation, is this was a couple months after that trip, probably in November, or about a month after. In November, I decided I need to drive this thing a little hard just for a little bit, give it the old Italian tune-up, So I did, and as soon as I revved that thing up to like 4.5, 5 grand, that check engine light went off, and it didn't come back on. Weird, right? I have a theory of why people have this fuel pump failure shortly after the Land Rover dealer replaces the flange for the recall. I think there's a connection there. Anyway, that's for another video. But anyway, so I got back from that trip in October. Awesome trip. The Land Rover did great, except for those 2 little issues, which were not really very big issues. I ended up replacing the shock. Not a problem. It's fine now. And like I said, that light went off. But we got back home, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to spend the next however long it takes to get this app done. So I've just been going on that app. And that's why I haven't made any videos. I do have several videos planned. I want to talk about that fuel pump issue and sort of an overall theory I have about a lot of Land Rover issues, and they originate, I think, in my experience, from the people who work on them, usually. Yes, they have problems, but those problems are usually exacerbated by poor workmanship from certain dealerships, even independents. So I want to do a whole video on that, because I have 3 separate incidents that I want to talk about on that. And it's not just a Land Rover thing, it's kind of the way things are in the world today with automotive repairs. Anyway, that's for another video. I also want to do a video about the tires I bought, the Cooper Discover, what are they? Rugged Treks. Awesome tire. But I want to talk about that in another video. So there'll be some videos coming up about that. But this channel is not only about Land Rover stuff. I never intended it for it to be. It just kind of happens to be the way it worked out. I'm also going to be doing some camping related videos. And yeah, some outdoor adventure kind of stuff too. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, back to the topic here. After driving it at 10,000 miles now, the LR4 has been great. It's been awesome. I haven't felt like anything off-road. It was less capable than my Discovery 2. Certainly, I think the Discovery 2 probably would do better on like rocks, big rock crawling. None of these Land Rovers are really rock crawlers, but I'd say the D2 would probably be a little better there, mostly because of the body. On the LR4 is a little, I'm more worried about the body, I guess. The D2 is a little more tucked in, but it did really great off-road. It's done really good off-road anywhere I've taken it and anything I've tried to do. And in that 10,000 miles, I've done 2 oil changes. My whole routine now is every 5,000 miles, and full synthetic. I'm using the 0W20. I know people say use a heavier weight oil, but I'm just sticking with that. I'm sticking with the 0W20 frequent oil changes, and it's been working out. It currently has no check engine lights on. But the one thing I can say now that I've had it for 6-ish months, 10,000 miles, I believe the LR4 is the most perfect SUV ever made. It can be a van if you need it to be, because the seats all fold flat. It's big inside, but it's not too big. I had a Toyota Sequoia. That was a very nice SUV. It was the previous generation to these newer ones. Awesome vehicle, but it was a little too big. I think the LR4 fits in a spot where it's not too big and it's not small. It's not tight inside. So really liking that. I wish it was the V8. You know, I have a 2016, so I have the supercharged V6, but the power is fine going up the big mountain passes, driving to and from these trips. I go through a lot of 75 mile an hour, really steep grade climbs, and it does great, you know, fully loaded. I just think it's the best SUV, and I just hope nothing happens to it. Something interesting that happened, something did happen to it. I was sitting in a Walgreens parking lot putting eye drops in my eyes that I had just bought. So, you know, I'm just sitting there doing the eye drop thing, and I see a Range Rover, black Range Rover, pull into the spot next to me. And then I see it back out, just in the corner of my eye. And then all of a sudden, boom, I get hit by a Range Rover right in the driver's door. Not very hard, but I got hit. So the lady comes out and she's, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. It ended up being the lady and her husband actually paid me a couple grand for the damage to my vehicle, which I'm going to take care of myself. It'll probably buff out. So that was interesting. So anyway, yeah, the LR4 is doing really well. I got to camp in it, and I've wanted to do this for a long time. You know, SUV camp in the back of the vehicle. And I got to do that in a town called Young here in Arizona. And it was about 25 degrees at night, but you know, I had an air mattress. The seats are all flat. So I had an air mattress in the back, and it was awesome. Worked great. I was nice and toasty in the back of there and super comfortable. It's nice to sleep in the vehicle. You know, if there's wind, it's no problem. You feel a little more secure than you do in a tent. If that matters, it doesn't really matter. But really liked it. Camping in the back of that thing. You could do two people. Two people could camp in the back of that thing. A little snug. You know, I wouldn't camp with a friend, but you know, somebody you're close to maybe. So that was cool. And again, that's just more of the versatility of the LR4. So that's really it. I just wanted to do a quick update video just to kind of let you know I'm still here, still planning on making videos. And like I said, I have a few coming up here pretty quick. But I've just been super busy writing this app and getting it in the store. It's a lot of work. So if you happen to be into camping, overlanding, or backpacking, check out the app. It's called Wild Plan. You can find it in the Apple App Store. Love to hear what you think of it. It's very early. I plan to add a lot more features to it and make it a lot better. But you kind of got to start somewhere, right? So that's where I'm starting. But anyway, look forward to a video coming up. I think the next one I'm going to cover how I got this Land Rover as cheap as I did. I've never actually, I don't know if I've mentioned in the other videos how cheaply I got this Land Rover. But there's a reason. It had a problem, as Land Rovers often do. I think I did mention that. I did mention that in the one video, but I want to go into a little depth on that and cover this sort of weird things that have happened to me with Land Rovers, not because of the Land Rover, but because of the people who worked on the Land Rover. So I'm gonna do that video next. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.